You know, we're all told that a good education is the key to a good life. But what happens when that promise just falls flat? We're about to dive into a modern poem that captures this very specific, kind of generational anxiety, that feeling of doing everything right, but still ending up feeling completely left behind.
So the poem kicks off with this huge, almost cinematic image. The author's looking up at the moon, which is this incredible symbol of our greatest achievements as a species, right? And this immediately sets up a really powerful contrast, the sheer grandeur of human ambition versus the quiet, personal view of just one person looking on.
And we're not just talking about some vague, poetic dream here. The author gets really specific, picturing satellites and rockets. But he's not just seeing them as cool tech, they're symbols of a shared purpose. This is the world of progress and meaning he wishes he was a part of, where human creativity is aimed at something way bigger than the day-to-day grind.
Now, what's really fascinating here is how the author decides to frame this very modern feeling of anxiety. They use the classical poetic style of Du Fu, who was this master poet from the Tang dynasty. Du Fu was basically a poet historian, famous for writing about the real struggles of his time. So, by using this style, the author is kind of elevating their own personal struggle, suggesting it's not just a private problem, but a symptom of a much larger issue in our society.
Okay, so we've got these cosmic dreams and this heavy historical style as our backdrop, and then the poem just pivots hard. It pulls way back from that grand scale of human achievement and zooms right in on the author's own, much more grounded reality. And this is really where the disillusionment starts to creep in.
And here it is, the first crack in that dream. The author went back to school looking for a fresh start, a meaningful change. But instead of finding inspiration, they found a place that just felt deflated. Hollow lectures, classmates who were totally disconnected. The one place that was supposed to build a path to the future felt completely detached and, frankly, pointless.
This whole experience leads the author to this central, really powerful metaphor that gets right to the heart of their critique, the idea of education as a degree factory.
And this just lays it all out, doesn't it? The stark contrast between the ideal and what they actually experienced. On one side, you have the promise of academia as this noble pursuit of knowledge. And on the other, you have the author's reality of it as this industrial process, just mass-producing graduates like products, totally disconnected from the very industries they're supposed to be innovating.
And get this, the author doesn't just see themselves as a product of this system, they feel like they're part of the problem. By calling themselves a factory manager, they're expressing this painful self-awareness from inside the ivory tower. It's almost like a confession, that they feel like a cog in the very machine they believe is failing everyone.
So if education is a factory, what happens when all those products hit the open market? Well, the poem now shifts from this big critique of the system to the very stark, very personal consequences. 100. The poem just drops this number on you like a cold, hard fact. Not an estimate, not around 100, but a precise count of every single attempt. 100 tries to make that degree, all that time in the factory, actually count for something in the real world.
And what was the result of all that effort? This absolutely haunting image. It captures not just rejection, but this profound, deafening silence. The feeling that all your work, all your hopes, just vanished without a trace into this deep, indifferent ocean. It's such a perfect metaphor for feeling invisible and unrecognized.
So this professional failure, it starts to trigger a personal crisis. At 30, an age when you're traditionally supposed to be getting established, the author feels like their potential is already just fading into mediocrity. All those cosmic dreams from the beginning of the poem, they feel impossibly far away now. But right when the poem hits its absolute lowest point of personal despair, it does something really surprising. It makes one final turn. It shifts from complaining about what is to imagining what could be. And it's this grand, completely selfless vision for the future.
So the author isn't just wishing for a job for themselves. They're laying out a whole blueprint for a better system. One where education is actually connected to the real world and where students graduate with skills that are truly valuable. And notice how they bring it all full circle, tying it back to those big projects like space exploration, wishing that kind of innovation could fuel purpose across every field for everyone.
This is the poem's final, incredibly powerful statement. The author is basically saying that their own unfulfilled life would be a worthy sacrifice if it meant that this better system could actually exist for future generations. Their personal success is now secondary to fixing the very system that failed them.
So what do we take away from this modern lament?
Is it just one person's story of being disillusioned, or does it tap into a much bigger anxiety in our society, a kind of crisis of meaning, where the paths we're told to follow, get the degree, get the job, just don't feel like they lead to a purposeful life anymore? The poem doesn't give us any easy answers, but it definitely forces us to ask the question.